Welcome to the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast, a podcast for those with chronic illness, chronic pain, and for those that love and support us. I'm Meg Quinlisk, your host. After 45 years of living with debilitating rheumatoid arthritis and having had over 45 surgeries, I have learned a thing or two. Chronic pain can be a lonely existence. It can leave us feeling alienated and disconnected from others. So just know that this is a safe space. We are going to share our wisdom and our woes. We're going to offer support and advice so that we thrive. So today's episode guest on What Doesn't Kill Me is me, your host of the podcast. So that seems a little odd, right? Like, how am I going to be the guest and the host? Well, I'm happy to say that I don't have to interview myself. I am going to have my best friend in the whole world, Maria McCool, doing the interview. And the reason she's doing the interview is she's known me since I was in first grade. So she probably is the person who knows me the best. And I think sometimes she knows me even better than I know myself. So she's going to be asking the questions. Today's interview is kind of an accumulation of the knowledge that I've learned over the past 45 years of living and suffering with rheumatoid arthritis and chronic pain. Now, here are the 7 insights that I think you're going to benefit from, and I think you're going to want to stay through the episode to listen for. 1 is that pain forces change. It changes every part of you. You cannot stay the same after you have experienced long-term chronic pain. Number 2, chronic pain changes you biologically, it changes you physically, and it changes you mentally. Number 3, chronic pain shrinks your world and it can expand your world. This cycle happens repeatedly. It's not just a one and done type of thing. It happens over and over again. And I explain what that is and how it impacts your life. Number 4 is, how do you balance the acceptance of your disease, really accepting your disease, but also staying hopeful that something is going to make your life better or easier. Number 5, the difference between believing that everything happens for a reason and finding a reason for your suffering. I find that one a really difficult thing to deal with, and it took me years to come to terms with it. Number 6, my description of what horrific pain actually feels like. Number 7, your scars that you develop when you're in chronic pain and when you have surgery and you're suffering. They do stay with you. They fade, but they stay with you. But also the lessons, the hope, the strength, and the resilience you learned and that you got from these scars stay with you as well. So we'll delve into that. So stay tuned and give a listen. So who actually is Meg Quinlisk, and why should you care about anything she has to say? I think it's important that you know a little bit about my history, where I came from, and some of the influences that made me the person I am today. Well, I grew up in a small town, Westchester, Pennsylvania, which I absolutely love. I come from a tiny Catholic family. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, which gave me the gift of faith, the concept of prayer, no meat on Friday, and endless amounts of guilt. And we had some odd habits at home. We were very open. We talked about everything. We were allowed to curse. We talked about sex whenever we wanted to. And every night we would have a 1-hour family dinner that you had to attend. You had to make conversation, and you couldn't leave the dinner table until you contributed to the conversation, which I think is where I learned the art of conversation and also my ability to not shut up most of the times. That upbringing gave me a lot of self-confidence. My parents did shower us with love and respect. So overall, it was a really great childhood. Now, it was by no means perfect. I mean, it was Catholic, for God's sakes, but it did lay a great foundation for who I became as a person. Well, at the age of 13, I developed rheumatoid arthritis, and that was at the point where my life changed forever. Managing a life with crippling chronic pain and chronic illness is a second career, which I actually got the hang of it after a while. Today, I am married to my best friend. He's the love of my life. He gives me so much support and encouragement, and I don't know what I would do without him. We live in Westchester. We have 3 beautiful children who are just amazing, and they give me equal amounts of love and support and criticism. A good bit of that to keep me humble, but that's okay. That's what kids do. But boy, do they make me laugh. And I couldn't ask for anything more in my life than my lovely marriage and my wonderful children. I'm also proud that I am a professional artist. I've been an artist for 20 something years and I am self-taught. So that was quite an exciting journey in my life. And I'm also an art instructor. I love teaching and showing people the beauty of art and how art sets you free and allows you to escape your pain and helps you forget what you're going through and gives you a vacation without even leaving home, which is pretty damn amazing. And I am the host of the podcast, What Doesn't Kill Me. And I want this podcast to be extra special, a place where we develop community and we share our stories and we just get to understand people a little bit better. And maybe you'll see something that helps you or hear something that helps you when you're dealing with people with disabilities. So that's a little bit about my background and where I came from. So let's get into the actual episode. Hi, Maria.
Hey there. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm so excited to have my dearest friend since first grade be doing this interview. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to do it.
Well, since we've been friends since first grade, and obviously we've went to school together, played sports together, went on dates together, like I feel like I've kind of grown with you since you were 13 and you were struck with rheumatoid arthritis. So can you explain what RA and how it affects the body?
Rheumatoid arthritis is a very destructive type of arthritis. It basically attacks the joints, but not just the joint itself. It attacks this tiny little lining that goes around the joint that's called synovium. And that synovial fluid is a gel-like substance that protects the joint and keeps it lubricated. So when it's rubbing against another bone, it's nice and soft and lubricated. What happens is with rheumatoid arthritis, the immune system gets turned on. It thinks that there's a foreign body and it goes in and attacks that fluid gel-like substance. So what happens is over time from this attack on that lining, you get inflammation, you get pain, and eventually you're going to get destruction of that joint. For me, because it's so aggressive, and it started out like a freight train when I was 13 and it has not let up at all. In fact, it's gotten worse in so many ways. I've had so many surgeries to repair joints, to replace joints, and just to clean up the joints. So I've had over 44 surgeries.
It is an alarming number when people ask how you're doing and they're like, she just has surgeries a lot. And when you say something like over 40, it's shocking.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is sometimes I can go a year without having a surgery, and then other times I can have 3 surgeries in 1 year.
You're doing this podcast called What Doesn't Kill Me.
Right.
I want you to tell us a little bit about the podcast itself. Why did you decide to do it? And what is the goal that you want to get out of it? You have so much good information to share.
After you go through 45 years of this type of experience, this roller coaster ride, you learn so much. I've made a lot of mistakes over these years, but I've also learned some critical things. I realized I have information that I could share with people. I would like this to become an area where other people with chronic illnesses are interviewed by me and they share their story. And we learn something from each other and they feel a connection because they're being heard. So much of what happens to us when we have this disability or we have chronic pain, we feel so separate from the rest of society. We feel separate from family members. So it's really nice when you can connect with somebody who is in a similar situation. And I'd like us to share these stories so a person that is really healthy and doesn't have this could get to know what somebody else goes through, somebody with a chronic illness. You can have an understanding for them. And then comes that connection. And then for that person, it's validation. And the final goal is acceptance, to accept our illness and to be okay with it. So that's the goal.
And I really think that if you can build a community around something that you have in similarity, in this case, it's chronic pain, it always ends up more helpful than you can imagine. There's so many key learnings that I hear from you that I can even use when I was helping my parents. Unfortunately, I felt that the medical world kind of dismissed them because of their age, but they needed care. They needed good care, you know?
Yeah.
I remember learning so much from you. They need an advocate. Can you share some of your key learnings first? Can we start there?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is that pain, chronic pain especially, has this ability to force change in your life. It's going to change so many things. forces change in every part of you. Once you go through chronic pain for a certain period of time, you are no longer the same person you were before you were diagnosed. It's a really complicated process. Chronic pain affects so many parts of you. It affects you biologically, it affects you mentally, and it affects you physically. People assume that it's just a physical type of condition. Pain is physical. It's something is hurting, something is wrong. It is so much more than that.
I can totally understand that. I mean, people talk about PTSD all the time, and it could be just from a car accident. They have a car accident, they break something, they have 6 months or a year maybe
Yeah.
of repair, and they have PTSD from that. That's like 1 year in their life.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about when you have years of chronic pain.
It's amazing because it does hit all those areas. For instance, biologically, it affects your long-term pain and stress response system. When your body goes into a stressful state, like surgery or chronic pain, your system goes into high alert and your brain chemistry gets impacted. Your serotonin levels and your dopamine levels decrease. Eventually, over time, your brain stops producing as much serotonin or dopamine than your brain would because it hasn't been in chronic pain for all these years. So I didn't understand that as a patient, that it greatly affects mood regulation. And it also affects your perception of pain because we all perceive pain differently. But once you've been in pain for so long, your body and your brain become hypersensitive to look for pain. You're constantly on high alert. It's like you're living in this crazy type of world where your body's just like, okay, when's the next pain? When is the next pain? And that's a horrible way to live. And it's
Yeah, that's
really
nothing to
hard.
look forward to.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. Yeah, hormonally, things change as well. When you're under stress because of the pain, you get so much adrenaline and cortisol released in your system, which that is horrible, horrible for your immune system. Those two stress hormones, that gets released constantly by someone who's in chronic pain. And what ends up happening is over time, it affects your cardiovascular system, it affects your digestive system. What ends up happening is you're more prone to depression. You're not getting the serotonin that you normally would. You're not getting the dopamine, and your body's in this high alert, this really crazy state of constant awareness, looking for the next pain episode. So
Mm.
that's what makes it very complex and very hard to understand. And it's different for everybody.
So let me ask you, since I've known you my whole life, you're a very inquisitive person, highly motivated. You're also very I always thought it was so interesting that you did read up, learn more. That information you just shared is a wealth of knowledge. You were always seeking that.
Yeah.
So, in receiving some of that information and knowing that it affects all these different things, has it impacted your mental
Yeah,
state?
it has affected my mental state and my physical state. I will tell you, for me, the mental part has been more difficult than the physical part. And the reason I say that is back in my early 20s, I was at such a low. I wasn't on any antidepressants. I wasn't getting counseling. I wasn't aware of all these changes that were happening inside my body because none of my doctors told me about
And
it.
this would have been the 90s, or
This would
like
have been
that wasn't even a conversation,
not a
probably.
conversation at all. And really, from the time I was diagnosed at 13, I should have been told that I need therapy, mental support.
Can I ask you the
Sure.
rock bottom of that time where nobody's telling you? Maybe you should talk to somebody. Nobody's telling you
Yes.
this. And then there had to be a point where you're like, this can't go on like
I
this.
remember driving my car down the highway and thinking, what is the point of living like this? I'm living in constant chronic pain. So if I can figure out something that I can hit that will end my life and not make me physically in worse shape, how do I find out what that would be? And I literally was driving around looking for, okay, would it be this pole? Would it be, nah, it's probably not enough. And I was logically thinking about how to end my life. And that's when it hit me. And thank God I wasn't that far gone that I couldn't make sense out of Meg, you need help. I had some bit of reality left in my head that I was able to say, this is not normal, Meg. You should never be thinking like this. It was a slippery slope that I was down, and I didn't even realize I was down that far because true clinical depression is something that you can't talk yourself out of. There's nothing for you to look forward to. You can't plan a trip and that's going to bring you out of it. Nothing will bring you out of it until you either get the right type of counseling or you get on some type of medication. And in my case, I needed medication to bring up my serotonin levels. I worked for DuPont. I started to see a therapist and a psychiatrist for the next 5 years. I went every week. Now, I was blessed in the fact that DuPont paid for all of it. In today's world, the sad truth is that doesn't happen. People have to pay for their own psychiatrists, their own psychologists, because insurance is in such a state that that's not considered a big deal. Mental
Yeah.
health is one of the least appreciated and respected areas of the medical community. It's crazy. I got help and it gave me my life back. But without that, I would have kept going downhill and I probably wouldn't be here anymore. So that's scary.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Ooh, terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I have to take a breath after that.
Yeah. And that's not to be dramatic, but yeah.
I'm
Anyway,
serious.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Meg, can you share with all of us some of your aha moments with having a chronic?
Yes. One of the biggest things that was an aha moment for me is I discovered that chronic pain shrinks your world and at times it can expand your world. So there's this process of shrinking and expanding. And the thing I mean about shrinking is when you are at a point in your disease, either when you're first diagnosed or you're having a major flare up, or say you have to have surgery and you're recovering from surgery, your world shrinks because it just can't stay the same. Again, it's that thing that pain forces change. Your world shrinks. You get to the point where it's about survival. You're trying just to survive. You're trying to take what's happening to you and just get through the next moment, get through the next day. So, what happens is you lose contact with friends, you feel alone, you tend to get more depressed because your world has just gotten so small. And every time this happens, you can get so depressed and so frustrated because suddenly, before this happened, let's say you were taking long walks, you were enjoying gardening, you were having a great time. Well, guess what? You have this flare up. You can't do that. Now you're having to sacrifice another thing that you loved. And that's what happens a lot with chronic pain is you just get into a routine. Say it's an exercise routine, or it's just a routine where you get together with girlfriends, you go on a trip, and then bam, you're stuck with this pain that doesn't stop. And all you want to do is get out of pain. So suddenly you stop calling friends. You don't talk to people because they're going to give you some stupid thing about, oh, this is, so sorry. But yeah, they're going to give you some cliche and you don't want to hear that. So really, your world just keeps shrinking until you can get a handle on the pain. And eventually, when you come out on the other side of that pain or you recover from that surgery and your world opens up again, your world expands. And as a result of that, you're able to make connections with friends. You're able to maybe decide, you know what? I'm not going to keep the job I had before because it's killing me. So it takes so much effort to get to that point where you say, you know what? I want to get out there again. I want to offer something to the world. And believe me, it doesn't happen when you're in that really terrible pain phase. It just can't because you're in survival. But I'll tell you one thing, Maria, all of us, every one of us has a responsibility to someone that is going through chronic pain because what happens is the things you say to that person or the way you interact with them or the invitations that don't come anymore because you're like, well, they're just going to say no. Those things tend to keep the person in that survival mode where they're just shrinking back and they're sort of dropping out of society. I had a couple of examples that I want to share with you of things that happened to me. One time I was going to the library. I had a bunch of books in my hand and I hit the handicap door. I go in through the door and the security guard gets up and proceeds to yell at me in front of all these people. That door is for the handicap. It is not for you. Do you know how much money you are wasting this library? It's costing us heat. It's costing us this and that, that. He's going on and on. People are looking over at me. And other than my hands, I don't appear very disabled. So really, people were believing what this guy was saying. I was so upset. I was shaking. And I turned to him and I didn't handle it well because I was so upset. And I yelled at him, calling him an awful human being. I dropped the books and I ran into the shelves and I sat down and I cried because I couldn't articulate to this ignorant person what impact that had on me.
Yeah. Can I ask when that was?
Sure. It was back when Katie was young. So it would have been again in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a while ago.
I'm thinking like you're saying, like early 30s, and it's just amazing, like how much you have to learn. You know, thank God I wasn't with you because
Oh, yeah, you would have handled it.
I
That
wouldn't
was,
have handled it well, but I
yeah.
probably would have said I would have handled something.
And I
But
would have loved that had you handled it for me because I was not equipped at that time to handle that. I was so fragile. I wasn't at the point in my life where I advocated for myself. I was just trying to disappear.
I had someone say, because now that we're in our 50s, what do you think is so different from your 50s from your 30s? And one of the things I said is like, I don't really care so much what people think about me anymore. And the
Yes.
3-year-old who was talking to me said, I can't wait for that day. And
Yes.
I said, well, you're hopefully the younger generation will get to it quicker than we got
I
to it.
sure hope so. Yeah, that's absolutely it. I'm a totally different person when I have an interaction with someone like that. As I got better at dealing with these things, type of situations, I had another one that came up where I was taking the kids and one of their friends to go shopping. And we parked in the handicap spot. I have a placard, I hung it up, and I'm getting Zoe, my youngest, out of her car seat. And Katie and her friend and Sam were standing on the sidewalk. And two women were sitting on a bench right there. And they're proceeding to say, so that my children can hear, they proceeded to say, well, she doesn't look handicapped. Why is she parking in that handicapped spot? And even if she is handicapped, she shouldn't have that many children. That's ridiculous. She can't possibly take care of that many children. And they were going on and on. Now, I had no idea this was happening. I'm in getting Zoe out. Well, Katie and her friend come running up with saucer eyes, so upset. Katie said, Mom, this woman said all these things. Oh my God, Maria, I had steam coming out of my ears. Now, this time I knew I had to handle it better. It was for my children, so they could see me advocate for myself, because especially in the world we live in, I had to model that behavior. So I got Zoe out of the car and I then went up to the women and I said, Excuse me, my children explained to me the things and the comments you were making about me while I was getting my daughter out of the car. And I'd like to know if you have any questions about my rheumatoid arthritis. Well, they didn't know what to say. And I said, Would you
Yeah,
like to?
saw Ben.
They had saucers. I said, Would you like to see the scars so I could show you what I've been through in this disease since I was 13? And they started to try to defend their actions. I said, The only thing you can do right now is say you're sorry because that was inappropriate and not okay. The worst thing is you said it in front of my children, and they put up with enough with having a mom who has rheumatoid arthritis. That was really not okay. And with that, we walked off, and Katie was so proud, and her friend was proud. And I felt that was the one time I felt like, you know what? I'm going to do it the right way. So over the years, you do learn how to advocate for yourself. But it does go back to what I was saying about how that could have, again, put me into that shrinking where I could have gone right back into, I'm never taking my children out again shopping. And I'm not going to park in the handicap spot because I don't look handicapped enough. I was so proud of myself that I didn't do that. And I continued to expand, not to shrink.
I mean, I
That's
think
exciting.
it's a great way that you put it, like the shrinking and expanding. What I'm hearing you say is talking about being in the moment,
Yes.
because you are going to have those shrinking times and it's okay. And you're going to have your expanding times.
Yes. And that is a cycle. It's not like you go through that shrinking and that expanding and then you've done it. It's one and done. It's a constant cycle that happens. And what's happening now for me is when I go through the shrinking and I realize, oh, I'm aware this is just the shrinking. This is a phase. You're not going to live here. Sometime you'll come out on the other side because you have before. You'll take those lessons that you learned from other times when you had a flare up or you're recovering from surgery. And you'll learn that I'm not going to live here. It's going to get better. I'm not going to make this bigger than it is. This is just a blip in my life right now. I will get back to going out with friends, to seeing people. I will take up those hobbies, some of them, not all of them. Some you lose forever. And that's part of this whole thing with a disability and rheumatoid arthritis. But the key is making your peace and accepting the way that your illness or your chronic pain affects you. Um, and also knowing that you'll learn how to deal with your flare ups. You'll learn how to ask for help because
Well, I'm just going to say in your case and for the listeners, I see that you've chosen to learn how.
that's true.
Like Meg in my life has has made the choices. I mean, I've watched, we've played a lot of sports together, and then
Yeah.
you had to doing that. What times you can't take trips, right? That
Yeah.
travel, what you want to do. I've been through where walks is your life, and then you can't walk for a year.
Yes.
You make a choice that, oh my God, I love to ski, but I can't now. So how do you not make that be like, oh my God, my life is over because I can't do what I like to do?
Okay, wow, that's probably one of the hardest things about having chronic pain and having a disability like rheumatoid arthritis. It is a slow death of things that you love. It slowly peels away the things that you love the most. Like you said, the skiing. I used to walk 2 miles a day. I went through a period of time where I could barely walk to the bathroom. It got better and I found a way. But during that period when your world shrinks again and you're going through that, it's really important to not catastrophize it and not say, this is going to be my life forever and ever. It's going to always be like this. I'm never going to be able to do anything fun. What has happened with me is I've had to change my interests in other things. I can't play sports. I used to love playing tennis. I would love to play pickleball, but I can't do that because I would get out there and I damage something. The next thing you know, I need surgery. But what I've learned is that I can still have a good life. I have made my peace with the fact that I'm not going to let my rheumatoid arthritis and my chronic pain become all I am. It's going to be a small part of me and it will never go away. I'll never have a day when I don't feel some part of my body in pain. So I know that. I know that's going to be it. But I'm going to have more good days than bad days, hopefully. And that's what my goal is. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep trying to find things that I can do. Like I discovered art. I taught myself
Can you
how to
talk
paint.
about that for just a second? Because I want to
Sure.
say super funny about that is I say it all the time. So I've been in the creative industry my whole life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you were in computer science
Science. Yep.
when we were younger, right?
Right.
And you would always say that you didn't have a creative bone in your body. You
Yeah,
weren't
I know.
blah, blah, blah. And I'd just be like, okay, I don't know. And now you're an artist.
Yes.
And you the most beautiful
Oh,
creation
thank you.
ever. And I always think that that's such a great example because people say, like, I'm not creative, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe that we are all creative because we were created, like
Yeah.
were created, so we were born in creation. So I think that's like the fact that you always said you couldn't do it, and that's what you're doing now because that is something that's like you said, it feels good on your hands
It's
to do it. And
fabulous.
you can get lost in it and do it for hours.
You're absolutely right with the whole concept of I never saw myself as an artist, creative even. And I always knew something was missing in my life, but I had no idea what it was. My arthritis comes along, takes away my ability to work on computers, which I absolutely loved that, loved working for DuPont. And bam, I could no longer do that. So I remember when I left work thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm in my early 30s. And I remember at that time thinking, you just have to have something that you can spend more time thinking about that something than your chronic pain. Because if you spend all your time inside your own head thinking about your pain and your suffering, guess what? You're never going to be able to get past that. The one thing I always have believed in is you can't be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, you'll never do anything. And if my arthritis has taught me nothing, it has taught me that you will fail over and over again. Your body will fail you over and over again. But guess what? You just have to keep picking yourself up and keep going. So art was like that for me. It became a way for me to escape my situation and to forget my pain. And I always say it saved my life. And I don't know that I would have found it had it not been for me leaving DuPont. I mean, I may have, but not to the extent I ended up doing it. So I think that is one of the things that's so important. First of all, is to know that you are more than just this pain. You are a person who is worthy of the world's attention. You're worthy of friendships. You're worthy of love. You are not the pain that you suffer through. It's a part of you. It's always going to be a part of you. And you should be proud of the fact that you're handling this. You're still here. You haven't driven off the bridge. You are still alive and you are still contributing to the world in whatever way you can. And I still hope for my disease to go into remission and for it to go away. And I still hope for no more surgeries. And that's okay. But I know that that might not happen. And I've also accepted that fact that it's probably not the last surgery I'm going to have. I'm probably going to have some more, but guess what? Today I'm okay. And that's kind of what keeps me going. And again, the art keeps me going, and teaching that to other people keeps me going. So I love that.
Well, I think this podcast is really is definitely what's going to keep you going as well. Because
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I
Oh,
think
thank
that
you.
I in more episodes to come, you have so much to share. I mean, one of the things that we discussed when we were talking about this all as a friend group was just that, because of how you've approached this, you have so much to share to help. But even just doctors and,
Oh, yeah.
how to approach things and, understanding your disease and then living your life to the fullest anyway. And I just think there's so much. That's what I love. I think it is your motto, like what doesn't kill me, because I've watched you, with
Yeah.
many ups and downs. And so,
Starting at the bottom. And you've heard me when I've gone through a surgery, and you'll call me, and you're always so good about that. And you'll call me and you'll ask how I'm doing. And I'll say, I'm not doing too good. I'm really struggling, but I know that that's going to have a beginning and an end. And the only way I know that is because I've had so many years of it. Like I have had years. And you've even had to remind me of that at times. Like, Meg, I remember the last surgery you had. When I called you at this time, you felt the same exact way. And sometimes you forget that. You forget, wow, did I? I don't remember feeling that way, because that's how your body protects you. It, it,
yeah,
it makes you
yeah,
forget the pain. You don't want to hang on and remember that pain. You want to forget that.
I know that sometimes I have to remind you that you do have rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes.
If you ever forget it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm like, I should do all of that one time. Maybe we'll pace that,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
even forget. And then, like you said, you're in bed for the next week in
Yeah.
pain.
That's what I'm still have not gotten down, is moderation. I have not, because I am definitely a type A personality. I am, man, I'm the Energizer Bunny. I can get 10,000 steps on my Fitbit just from puttering around the house all day. Like, that's insane.
So, Meg, is there any other light bulb aha moments that
Yeah.
are important?
I think one thing I'd like to get out there is, please stop saying to somebody when they're in chronic pain or they're suffering, well, things always happen for a reason. I have,
Oh,
yeah, I have to tell you, that is probably the one thing that just sets me off and makes me want to scream at the person that's saying it. And I know it's well intentioned. No one says that to you to make you angry or make you upset. But what that does is, first of all, it's condescending, and it's making a huge assumption that it's okay you have this because it happened for a reason. And God, that sucks. I don't want to believe that at all. I mean, to me, I believe that things are random because it's such a complex thing, arthritis. You've got genetics involved. You have situations in your life that turn on that gene with arthritis. You have stress that's there. So all these things are jumbled out there together. And randomly, guess what? You ended up with arthritis. Now, the really sad thing is people that when they say that, it's because they want to make sense out of the world. They want to believe that if I can understand and put a box around this, then I feel safe. And that's really what it's about. It's somebody's ignorance and lack of understanding around chronic pain and around suffering.
I always think of it's like that, but our parents did. Like you get a cut and they say, "Let me kiss it; it's all better."
Yes.
Like it's that box, right?
Yes,
Where
it's that
we need to
box.
like, okay, and now it's done. You're done. We move on.
Right. And that is comforting to people. They don't know what to say. So they say that and they think, okay, conversation over, let's move on. Well, guess what? That alienates me completely from the person who said it. I want nothing to do with that person because I'm like, are you kidding me? You really are kidding me? Uh, a what? Like that does not help. I think the people that are blessed that find some way to live with this illness, not overtaking their whole world. And again, that doesn't happen when you're in a terrible chronic pain state or recovering from surgery. It's in that expanding type of area. You're handling things, you feel proud of yourself. If you can somehow find a way to make a reason out of the suffering, and for me, the reason is that I can offer this podcast to help other people. And that gives me a reason for sharing my information and for just being attentive to other people and connecting with other people. They're the ones that are blessed. And I know that I'm very, very blessed. There's a ton of people that just surviving is enough. Just getting up and getting through the day, they deserve an award for that. because of the situation they're in. I've been blessed, Maria, with so many family members, friends, and my beautiful husband and my children that offer me so much support. So many people don't have that. So many people never get to that other side where they are ready to offer anything because they don't have these things. So, strangely, I feel more blessed than cursed.
Well, something you touched on in the beginning of our conversation was that you're not going to make it define you. And I think that's what has allowed you to live a great life outside of the disease. And you have this great family, a great husband, and great friends. Others that I know, their chronic illness consumes them.
Yeah.
And it's hard, right? For those of us that love them, it's hard. That's all that we can talk about when we're together. Like if since we've been 13, if that's all we could talk about, it's so limited to a relationship, right? Like, right, it makes the relationship small. So then you don't get to have this expansive relationship.
Right.
There's times where you're either coming out of a surgery or you're not doing well. And maybe I have something that's really going on wrong in my life. And I want to talk to you about it, but then I'm thinking like, oh my God, are you serious? She's going, but the thing of it is you really do want to hear it.
I do.
Even then,
Maria,
relationship.
I get so sick of my story. I get so sick of the same over and over and over again. I love to talk about somebody else's situation. I love to offer advice or just support because that makes me feel good. If I had to talk about myself all the time, Jesus, I'd be hitting my head against the wall. So I agree with you. It does make your world small. If you are just about this illness or just about your pain and you have nothing else going on and you've allowed nothing else in your life but this pain and this suffering, believe me, you're going to be a really boring person to hang out with. And that's just life. So, I mean, it sounds tough, but sometimes you need a little tough love to realize that you got to have more to you, a sense of humor, a sense of fun, and a sense of adventure, and that hope, like really being hopeful that things are going to get better. So important.
Well, you're certainly a beacon for that, I would say. Knowing all of the things that you've gone through, and it's been a lot, and it's unimaginable at times. And you're still just funny, loving, caring. You're still the same Meg that I've known for all of these years.
That makes me so happy because to me, that's the hardest thing to do. Yet that's what makes your life fulfilled. And that's what makes your life full.
Meg, you've been through a lot. Obviously, you've been through many surgeries, ups and downs. I keep saying you're the bionic woman.
I'm going to be bionic. Yes. Yeah, I'm almost there. Yes.
That's my name for you. Of all these highs and lows, the shrinking and the expanding, is there one time that stands out the most to you?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I got my job at DuPont. Within 2 years, I ended up having to have my first surgery. Before that, I hadn't had any surgeries, and I had no concept that there would be surgeries in my future. I was having such intense pain in my neck. It felt like someone was trying to rip my head off of my body. The pain was so unbelievably constant. I couldn't take it. I had some bones in my spinal cord because of the rheumatoid arthritis. It was up at the highest area, C1 through C3, right up at the top of your neck.
And this was your first surgery?
First surgery. And I'll tell you, when I talk about it, I'll tell you why it was the best one to have first. But regardless, I ended up having to have the surgery done. And in those times, it was the 90s, they put you in a halo. Now, do you remember, Maria, what the halo looked like? It's a torture.
I was doing your hair, remember?
Yes, you were doing my hair. What they do is they put this 8-pound metal cage on you. It's all down your whole body. And the reason they did that is because you have rheumatoid arthritis. So to heal, you have to wear that thing for 3 months. You have to be in this torturous device for 3 months. They don't do that anymore, thank God. They've gotten wise to the fact that that's probably overkill. But at the time, that's what they did. They never explained to me what was going to happen. So what happened was I wake up from the surgery. No, they said they fit me. The crazy thing is they fit you for the halo the night before your surgery.
And they don't tell you it's going to be bolted.
No, they don't even show you the screws. I wake up from the surgery, and because they put this halo on and drill it into your head with a drill, they drill it in when you're out, and you can't give them any feedback on how it feels or if your neck is too distended or they can't tell the right position. When you wake up from the surgery, that's when they know what bolts they have to move. So I woke up from surgery And the pain was something I have never
Oh,
felt before
oh,
because my head was too far back and it was stretching out the area that had just been operated on.
okay.
So they actually had to go in and make a new bolt mark in my head. I'm screaming and crying. The surgeons are running. They're hearing me scream and cry. They know I have to be adjusted. So they get me up. They have a drill, and I'm sitting up while they undrill the one that's in the back of my head and they drill a new hole. So I am actually awake while this is happening, and the tears are streaming
They
down my
do that.
face. They can't put you to sleep for that process because it's really bad to have your neck that distended because you're ruining the work that they did by having the neck not in the right placement. So they have to do it as immediately, as fast as they can. And the way they do that is screw it, suck it up. You're going to suffer through this. So when I tell you I've never felt pain before that or since then with all the other surgeries, and that's why I say it was the best surgery because everything after that was a piece of cake. I'm like, oh, hip replacement, no problem. Rotator cuff, no problem. Foot surgery, no problem. Because at least I'm not wearing a halo.
And and it's just amazing. I think that's why I call you the bionic woman, is because it's amazing how far things have come
Yes.
since.
What happens in that situation is your nerves in your head take about a month to die. And until those nerves in your head die, you are feeling a hot knife in four areas of your skull. And I remember when I was in the hospital crying my eyes out saying, I can't live like this. I can't go through this. Because, of course, they're giving you morphine and they're giving you pain meds, but it was not touching the pain. It was not killing the pain. I had to go home on all this pain medication and I had to wait until those nerves died before I got any relief. And it was so heavy on my head that that also was what caused so much pain. Because again, you have this area operated on, you have a crushing weight down on it. So while you're going through that intense pain, again, you think this is never going to end, it's going to last forever. Suddenly the nerves die and you no longer feel this cage that's on your head. And I can remember starting to laugh about it because I'm going into the refrigerator to get something and I'm leaning in and my bars are getting stuck on the shelves in the refrigerator and I have to call somebody, Mom, I can't get out of the refrigerator. And like in that kind of situation, I was so ready to laugh and I was so ready to like experience life without that pain. And what that does is you come face to face with pain that you've never experienced before and somehow you come out on the other side. And I just recently went back and read a journal entry that I had made. Now, I have to be honest, I don't know if I wrote this and created this journal entry or if I read it and wrote it down because again, it was back in the 90s. I can't remember, but I want to read it because it gives you such an intimate awareness of what that type of pain is. It says, now I'm living in horrific pain. And when I live in the horrific pain, I realize that this is absolutely the one time in my life when I live in the moment, the actual present moment. When you are in this kind of pain, you are blind to everything else. The past is gone. The future has no meaning because you can't even see the next moment. There is no after this. I am pure animal, and there is nothing pretty, nothing positive, nothing all inspiring. There is no reason. As you're writhing in this endless abyss of pain and torture, it is a complete and whole mind and body experience that you can see no way out of. And when I went back and read about that just recently, I realized how much living through that has changed my life. I could never have made such a big change if I hadn't gone through that. If you suffer that greatly and you come out on the other side, you're shocked at your strength and your resilience. I could actually live through something like that. It makes a scar. I mean, physically, I have a scar and I have bald spots all over my hair, which you do a great job covering them up. But there's something I'm quite proud of because those are scars that have faded over time. But I'll never forget what I went through. And I'll never look at myself the same way because I'm not fragile. Even though my body feels like there's glass underneath my skin, I am strong. I am resilient. I have been through hell and back. And what I want to say to people is at every point in this pain process, in this disease, things will change. They will change for the worse sometimes, and they will change for the better. Nothing in life can stay the same. So while you're suffering and you're going through this god awful part of your disease, think about the fact that this is going to change and you're going to come out on the other side. And you're going to have these scars that won't leave you. But the lessons that you learned and the resilience that you learned and the strength that you have, that doesn't leave you either. And that gets you ready for the next terrible time that you have to go through. And what I want to share with people is you're so much more than you think you're capable of because you're existing, you're living. You haven't given up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I've witnessed it. You're stronger than ever.
thank you.
And weaker. Isn't that funny?
Isn't it? So much so. It's
You know what I mean? Like your strong scale is way up here, but if you really measured your strength, probably more than it used to be.
Oh, it's so much less than it used to be. And you know what? Truth of the matter is, what matters is that resiliency to me. I mean, we're all going to get old. That's the crazy part, Marie. At some point, you'll be where I am as far as chronic pain, just because of aging. So I'm going to be able to help you out during that process. I definitely will.
So Meg, I need you to answer in 30 seconds or less. What doesn't kill me, fill in the blank.
Helps me grow. What doesn't kill me helps me grow.
Wow.
And I feel like if I'm not growing, it gets really boring and life gets dull and stagnant. So growth. That. Yeah. Well, thank you, Maria, so much. I appreciate it. And we will be talking again. We'll do this again very soon. Thanks, love.
Yeah.